certainly not be around for me and for my generation. It's just ridiculous to assume that it will be. What I'd like to ask you is, and maybe this isn't something you can speak to, maybe it is, how bad could this potentially get? I mean, when we're talking about $30 trillion of debt and the fact that there seems to be no sign of them stopping. I mean, what's the worst case scenario here? And then if I could ask you to speculate on what would the best case scenario be if we didn't do anything? I mean, because in my mind, this has to get bad. The debt doesn't just disappear unless we really have tremendous economic growth that just continues in spite of our bad spending habits. It just seems to me that it's not mathematically sustainable.
No, it's not. And here's the thing. Once you get to the point where people, investors, bondholders, bond buyers start to doubt the capacity of the United States to pay back its debt, that's when you get problems. So back in August 2023, Fitch, who's a big ratings agency, they downgraded the United States credit rating from AAA to AA+. And one of the major factors they said that they were downgrading America's creditworthiness was because of lots of reasons, like aging population, too much spending, etc. But the debt was the big driver of that downgrade. Once investors start to lose confidence that America can pay back its debts, once that happens, then investors start moving to protect themselves in ways that protect them but don't necessarily lead to economic growth. So that's one scenario. That's not a good scenario. The other scenario is that there's a collapse of confidence in America's capacity to pay back its debt, and then you end up with items like the government simply adding a zero to the currency to basically inflate the debt away.
Yeah.
But that produces its own problems. This was tried in Germany in the 1920s.
Yeah.
This has been tried in lots of other countries, and you end up with rampant inflation. So those are some of the sort of worst case scenarios. The best case scenario I would see is there's some sort of substantive crisis that causes sufficient shifting of incentives on the part of citizens and legislators to engage in serious cutting of federal spending, particularly in the areas where most federal spending goes, which of course are the Social Security programs. That's the vast bulk of federal spending, and that's where cuts have to occur. If there's a sufficiently severe crisis that would force legislators to act and citizens to support them, then you would see, a substantive cut in spending, which would have consequences for the debt. The other sort of best case scenario is you have a president and a legislature that are very committed to free markets, that are very committed to free growth, and embark upon a rigorous deregulatory pro-competition agenda, economic policy agenda, that spurs the American economy forward so that it gets to 4.5%, maybe even 5% growth. And that would dramatically shrink the proportion of debt vis-a-vis GDP. So those are not impossible things. They're not impossible, but they're hard.